Hello viewers, I am Professor P.K. Kathal from Department of Applied Geology, Dr. Hari Singh Gaur University, Sagar, India. Topic of today's lecture is Applications of Foraminiferal Ecology. These are the contents. Introduction. Ecological studies of foraminifera constitute a dominating feature of oceanographic investigations. In fact, they are unicellular protists and therefore they are very sensitive to even very minute changes in the environment, and it is reflected in their morphology and assemblages. Therefore, they are preferred over other microfossil groups for proven utility in the studies of environment and climate of present and past, biostratigraphy and high resolution biostratigraphy, biostratigraphic correlations, tracing up of stratigraphic boundaries, paleolatitudinal reconstruction and marine transgression and regressions, study of physical, chemical, biological oceanographic environments for study of sediment transfer, upwelling, major oceanic currents. And they are also used in oil exploration. Applications based on different ecological parameters include study of paleo depth on the basis of distribution of species. In fact, distribution pattern of benthic and planktic calcareous and agglutinated forms help delineating marsh, beach, channel, lagoon, inner and outer neritic, bathyal and abyssal zones in sedimentary sequences. Coastal shelf fauna is dominated by benthic species. However, planktic species first outnumber them in outer shelf and replace them completely in the upper bathyal zone. So the ratio of planktic versus benthic, that is called PV ratio, of 20:1 shows depth either 200 meter or more. Ratio of living and dead fauna in recent sediments indicates rate of sedimentation in the basin. Decrease in the number of living tests show decrease in the rate of sedimentation. Similarly, below CCD in abyssal and hardal zones in tropical waters, calcareous tests are poorly accumulated due to dissolution, making the ratio of diverse deep water agglutinated forms very high. We can determine paleo depth on the basis of wall characters. Diverse milioliths dominate inner shelf while biloculine dominate bathyal zones respectively. We find that smooth-walled calcareous perforated species occur in inner shelf, simple ornamented species, costate and striate, in outer shelf and bathyal zones. Coarser ornamented, larger and bigger forms occur in deep water zones. Simple agglutinated species show bays and lagoons, but labyrinthic walled species with siphonate chambers indicates central, outer shelf and bathyal zones. Paleotemperature can be worked out on the basis of planktonic species because cosmopolitan planktonic species like Globorotalia menardi occurs as a rare species north of 18 degrees in northern hemisphere, but it becomes common in the area of south equatorial current and becomes abundant in equatorial water. So in this way we can recognize the different water masses. They are good paleothermometer. For example, Globizarina bolidis dominates in the slope waters during summer, but it is replaced by Globizarinitis ruber in the cooler months. Fauna of lower coast in the lower latitudes, for example, tropical zone, may be similar to the modern fauna of the higher latitudes near the polar regions. Phytoplankton productivity controls the standing crops of planktonics. So the other factors like salinity, temperature, oxygen content, phosphate, etc. become secondary. Spinose planktic forms indicate environment of euphotic zone, for example Globizarina, while keeled and thicker planktic foraminifera, example Globorotalia, shows lower zones. We can also work out the paleo environment of deposition on the basis of habitat. In fact, population and wall composition can show the depth and temperature to some extent. Calcareous forms, they normally belong to normal temperature or they occur in shallow or lower latitudes. But we find that agglutinated forms which generally belong to little cooler water in deep waters or maybe in higher latitudes. Effect of dissolution in the form of etching may be observed on planktonic foraminiferal tests, particularly below carbonate compensation depth that varies from 4,500 meter near the equator to as low as 500 meter near the poles. The enlarged view shows the etching mark on because of dissolution on the planktonic test. Murray's model for paleo environment of position is very important. In this triangular diagram, we take three principal type of wall composition which are not only genetically controlled but also controlled by the environmental parameter. These are in the form of suborder Miliolina, which include porcelaneous walls, Rotellina, which include calcareous porphyroid wall, and Textularina, which include agglutinated wall. In this particular diagram, if our sample has all the three in similar proportion, that is 33%, then the point of the sample will fall in the center of the triangle. But if it is shared by any two of the three suborder, they are shown or they will fall on the lines. So if we see that if our sample has come from hypersaline lagoon, then all the points will fall within this narrow strip, and this test will be belonging to 100%, either 100% Rotellina or 100% Miliolina, or they are shared between the two. If the sample is from normal marine lagoon, which I am showing here, the horizontal lines, all the points will fall in this particular region, and we will know that the environment of deposition was normal lagoon. If our samples are showing distribution of the three order which is falling within this white part bordered by this line, inside this line, then it is belonging to hypersaline marshes. If the samples are from normal marine marshes, then all the points will fall within this region. Within this region, anywhere they are either maybe composed of 100% Textularina, 100% Rotellina, but never more than 50% Miliolina. Similarly, if the samples are from most self area, they will fall within this particular region, which is crossed over here, shown by the cross lines, and the points will fall within this particular region, and it is either shared by Textularina 100% and or by Rotellina 100%, but it will never be more than say around 20% Miliolina. The last, if our all the points are falling within this strip inside this region, then the samples are showing us an environment which is belonging to hyposaline marshes. So in this way, the ecological parameters can show us the environment of deposition of the sediments in the basin. We can also work out pH or hydrogen ion concentration for acidification in the water. The normal seawater ranges in pH from 7.8 to 8.3, but excessive concentration of CO2 may lower it down. A small specimen of same species may survive better in low pH in comparison to the large ones, and some species like Trochamena, Anomalina and certain miliolids can tolerate pH as low as 7.2. Here in the pictures, Trochamena and Anomalina, which can withstand a fairly low pH conditions, are shown. Paleomonsoonal studies may be worked out on the basis of morphogroups. In fact, ecology of benthic forms help interpretation of paleomonsoonal precipitation. Percentage distribution of two morphogroups show considerable fluctuations. For example, more rounded symmetrical forms show higher rainfall, and more angular symmetrical forms show poor monsoon. This work was done by Nigam and co-workers in 1992. Elongate forms also show calm water condition as shown in the two pictures on the right hand side, and rounded forms show agitated water conditions or zone of high aeration where lot of oxygen is available as shown in the pictures on the left hand side. This phenomena has been simplified in this sketch, which shows the normal and extended microenvironment at the mouth of a river. Here we find that a river is entering into the sea, and this blue shaded area is the normal front of sediment or is a microenvironment. But if the precipitation is high, we will find that the microenvironment is extending towards the ocean side. So if it is extending oceanward, then it is showing high precipitation or high spell of precipitation, or if it is retreating back towards the river mouth, it is showing low precipitation or poor monsoon. The same is shown here in two sketches. In the upper one, the river is having a microenvironment restricted to its mouth, and it is indicating poor monsoon condition. But here in the diagram on the lower side, where lot of clouds are shown, meaning lot of precipitation of rainwater, then the microenvironment is moving towards the microenvironment is moving towards the ocean side. So poor monsoon is indicated by microenvironment retreating to the river, and good monsoon is indicated by microenvironment spreading seawards. This is the depiction of the same phenomena in the nature. We have selected one river from East China Sea, in which the blue line is showing the microenvironment near the river mouth, but you see it is in the enlarged view. But if there is more rain, then the microenvironment will be extended towards the ocean side. In this diagram, three parameters have been combined together to work out the paleomonsoonal precipitation, variation in paleomonsoonal precipitation. The three curves are on the basis of morphogroups. This is curve A here. This is on the basis of morphogroup. Curve B is on the basis of PV ratio, and curve C is on the basis of benthic test per unit weight for climate. We find that the three curves have some uniform peaks. I will show them by progressive arrows. We find that here this is a peak which is indicating year 1915 AD as a dry period or monsoonal precipitation was lowest. Then we find that these peaks are showing the same poor spell of monsoon at 1800 BP. This arrow is showing dry condition at 3000 BP. Progression of this arrow is showing another set of condition at 3500 BP. Next is at 3790 BP, and another is at 4050 BP, and the deepest in time is 4380 BP. So this way we can say that the curves drawn on the basis of morphogroups, benthic ratio and benthic test per unit weight of sediment are showing us the pattern of normal and poor monsoon. Coiling direction ratio is useful to determine non-discontinuity in any sedimentary sequence. In fact, dominance of dextral or sinistral forms may change suddenly in a sedimentary sequence, showing non-discontinuous sedimentary environment. This ratio is used in deciphering the paleoclimate. Similarly, coiling direction in planktic species is very good for study of paleo temperature. In the diagram, this is the North Pole, and here it is the South Pole, and this is the point of equator, and we find that there are different temperature zone. For example, from here to here it is 10 degree, up to here 18 degree, 24 degree, 30 degree, 24 degree, and from south pole to this point it is 5 degrees Celsius, and up to here it is 18 degrees Celsius. We find that there are two species, namely Globizarina pachyderma and Globorotalia truncatulinatis. They are showing sinistral coiling. This zigzag line over here is showing the sinistral coiling in these two species, and similarly at the south pole again up to 5 degrees Celsius they are showing sinistral coiling, and their names are Globizarina pachyderma and Globorotalia truncatulinoides. So this parameter of sinistral and dextral coiling in planktic foraminifera has been used in developing paleo temperature map of Cenozoic, particularly during Pleistocene times. Oxygen isotope of calcareous test are very useful in paleo temperature. In fact, comparison of change in oxygen isotope levels, benthic forms for bottom water conditions and planktic forms for upper water conditions are very useful. The isotope 18 of oxygen builds up because glaciation causes more oxygen 18 to accumulate in seawater, because isotope 16 evaporates and gets trapped on land as glacial ice sheet. This is the equation showing how to calculate the paleo temperature. And the sketch below is showing us two conditions. One is interglacial and second is glacial. In the interglacial, we find that oxygen isotope 16 is evaporating, but it is getting returned in the form of rains or through the rivers from the continent, and therefore a delicate balance of 0.0 has been taken as a standard to show the interglacial time. But during the glacial period, the oxygen 16 is although evaporating, but it is getting trapped in the ice sheets which are getting accumulated on the poles and other parts of the continent. Therefore, the ocean level is also going down, but the ratio of O18 is increasing in favor of it. And here in the curve we find that in the upper part of the curve the ratio is close to 0 and it is showing interglacial period, but in the lower part of the curve it is more close to 1.5 or even going closer to 2 and showing glacial condition. So this is how the two oxygen isotopes 16 and 18 have been used in determination of glacial and interglacial period in Pleistocene times. Oxygen isotope equilibrium denotes similar environmental conditions. Hence, a difference in this ratio in different species means temperatures during their growth. Oxygen isotope studies have revealed that temperature declined very rapidly at the end of Cretaceous. Bottom water temperature of South Atlantic was 10 degrees Celsius, which is higher than today, and Antarctic ice sheet was already present at its present dimension in the Pliocene. These are very important inferences. Similarly, carbon isotopes are very helpful in studying deep water circulation as well as carbon cycle. Their behavior means behavior of isotopes of carbon are less well understood, but still we find that the lighter isotope, that is C12, is preferentially removed from sea by planktic species. After that, their organic matter decays in deep water, making it progressively rich in C12. Amount of carbon isotope in benthic species revealed the history of deep water circulation, changes, and large-scale variation in cycling of carbon between atmosphere, biosphere, and hydrosphere. Therefore, it has helped us in understanding the behavior of carbon cycle in the immediate geological past. Oxygen and carbon isotopes are also useful in drawing other inferences like abrupt changes in oxygen and carbon isotope of planktic and benthic species in the latest Paleocene has been worked out from 55 to 5.5 million years. We find mass extinction in deep sea benthic foraminifera on the basis of isotopes. They help in the study of surface temperature during early Eocene, which was 19 degrees Celsius, and it inclined to 7 degrees Celsius in Oligocene through temperature stability episode. It was found that during the Pleistocene time, the temperature fluctuated many times. Similarly, early Neogene climate optimum is marked by lowest value of oxygen 18 isotope. Lowering of oceanic temperature during mid-Miocene and cryospheric evolution of Antarctica has been worked out on the basis of work done by Srinivasan, Kennett and Scott and Keller. Strontium isotopes are very useful. Variation in strontium isotope ratios help solving long-standing problems like refining late Neogene biostratigraphic datums, upgraded correlation and dating of late Neogene epoch boundaries. They have also helped in correlating the near shore and deep shore sequences, dating of transgressive and regressive cycles on the continental margins. This work is based on the Hurdle et al. And Srinivasan. Boundary problems have been solved on the basis of benthic foraminifera. The KT boundary or Cretaceous tertiary boundary witnessed major extinction phase of animal and plants. Following studies have helped in the study of this transaction beside other aspects in Cenozoic, appearance and disappearance of several foraminiferal species. New pattern of water circulation in Cenozoic ocean occurred due to opening of North Atlantic along Wrexham's Ridge. Increased diversity has helped correlating the rise in the temperature. Other parameters are also useful in solving boundary problems, like observation based on foraminifera at KT boundary shows that Danian was only 1 meter thick or less than it, and the entire Paleocene was around 5 meter thick in South Atlantic based on an abrupt change in flora and fauna. Paleocene, Eocene boundary and Miocene, Pliocene boundary issues have been tackled at various places. Correlation data based on coiling direction, ratio of planktics help solving Pliocene Pleistocene boundary issues based on species of Globizarina, that is Globizarina pachyderma, and species of Globoretelia, Polaniatina, and Globoquadrina. Hyalina baltica, which is a cold water species, appeared first in the beginning of Pleistocene. It indicates Pliocene Pleistocene boundaries at various places. Foraminiferal assemblies are very helpful in deducing environment or microenvironment of deposition of basin on the basis of typical nature of the assemblies. For example, the Mars assemblage will look like this. I will be showing you slide after slide how a particular assemblage is indicating a particular environment. This assemblage consisting of ammonia, alphidium, quinquelocolina, trochamina, textularia, cibicides is indicating inner shelf. Assemblage cacidulina, nonian, bulimina, lenticulina, globizarina, brizellina is showing the outer shelf. And this assemblage of benthic and planktic species is showing bathyal zone. Assemblage of agglutinated foraminifera, Hormosina, Rheophax, Abdomina, etc. They are showing abyssal zone, indicating of very high pressure conditions. And calcareous assemblage including Planulina, Pergo, Stylostomella, Uvizarina, and other species shown in the plate are showing deep water condition. And agglutinated foraminifera from deep sea will look like this. They will include Ammobaculitis, Ammodiscus, Izarella, Haplophragmites, and other species as shown in the table. Similarly, if the environment was related to the reef, this particular assemblage is very helpful in indicating the reef environment. This work was done by Saraswati. So in this way we can say that ecology of foraminifera is very important in the study of geology, where we need to understand not only biostratigraphy but also the paleo environment of deposition and also the paleolatitudinal position of the basin. Thank you very much.